Germany was already split into 3 zones of post-war control during the Yalta Conference, which took place a couple of months before the war ended. This meant that American, English, and Soviet intelligence teams were racing to retrieve as much precious equipment as they could before the division took place. Though America was trying to recover equipment and weapons, the most important of all were the Nazi scientists. The Joint Intelligence Objective Agency was directly responsible for Operation Paperclip, a campaign to get the Nazi scientists away from the Soviets so that they could work for the United States. As American troops pushed back the German lines, small groups of intelligence officers known as T-forces followed. Their objective was to gather up German technology, research materials, and technicians. These resources were to be brought back to the United States for evolution. It soon became apparent that in order to understand this technology, the people responsible for developing the technology would have to be brought to the United States as well.
Werner von Braun was arguably the most important scientist brought from Germany under Operation Paperclip. During World War II, von Braun worked for the Nazis developing the V-2 rocket. The United States realized that the V-2 rocket had great potential if coupled with a nearly perfected atomic bomb. Though he was initially labeled security risk, the Office of the Military Government U.S., the body responsible for post-war occupation of Germany, found it difficult to reach a conclusion about von Braun. The areas where von Braun previously worked were now under Soviet control. The U.S. couldn't find hard evidence against Werner von Braun. In 1950, von Braun and his team were transferred to the Redstone Army Base. While there, von Braun and his team developed the Jupiter-C rocket. This rocket was a predecessor to the Saturn V rocket. The Redstone base was just outside of Huntsville, Alabama, and von Braun had a great influence on the small town. He founded the National Space Society, which helped the public understand the importance of space travel. The construction of this building also helped bring in money to the town and expanded the borders nearly 40 miles. Because of von Braun's involvement, the city today is known as Rocket City. Werner von Braun was an inspiration to millions of people throughout the world. His role helped him to push U.S. policy to support America's space endeavor. Dolph Thiel, a Ford-Bliss scientist, once commented, "As a master salesman and promoter, von Braun made maximum use of his most outstanding trait. He was so charming, he just charmed the pants off of you, and he was absolutely convinced that what he was doing was right." Time magazine science editor Jonathan Leonard also reflected, "There is no doubt about his engineering competence, but von Braun is more than a mere technician. He is also something of a prophet and a mystic. He is regarded by the more conventional rocketmen with the mixture of suspicion and admiration that must have been felt by cozily established clerics towards St. Francis of Assisi or Peter the Hermit. He worries and frightens them with his technological visions. When he talks to the public about his confident plans for voyaging into space, they accuse him of preaching to the birds. When they observe the following he has gathered around him of little boys in toy shop spacesuits and teenage enthusiasts with space dust in their eyes, they accuse him of leading a children's crusade towards sheer disappointment." However, these accusations of false hope were proven to be incorrect when on January 31st, 1958, von Braun's Redstone rocket successfully launched Explorer 1 into orbit. He used this event to further inspire Americans and bring a feeling of pride with his early morning press speech saying, "We have firmly established a foothold in outer space. We will never give it up again." Here we see Werner von Braun making a speech after receiving more funding for Saturn V rockets.
Do you feel better now that the president has asked for more money for Saturn?
Oh, yes, definitely.
More secure?
Well, it's just, it used to be a shoestring program, and now we can really develop a sound program with emphasis on reliability and component testing and all the other things we couldn't afford so far.
Dr. von Braun, how would you say we stand in relation to the Russians, and do you think we can ever catch up?
I'm convinced that in the space field, the Russians are ahead of us, particularly in large weightlifting capability, and that at the moment the problem is not so much to catch up, but first build up the working speed that they have already demonstrated. After we are running as fast as they do, there's still a considerable gap to close, and only the future will tell whether we'll manage to close that gap.
Being in the public's eye gave Werner von Braun the influence in the government he needed to push the space program as far as it needed to go. As early as the launch of Sputnik 1, von Braun was steering the government. During that fateful night on October 4, 1957, von Braun went right up to the Secretary of Defense Neil McElroy and told him bluntly, "We knew they were going to do it. Vanguard, the American civilian satellite program, will never make it. We have the hardware sitting on the shelf. For God's sake, turn us loose and let us do something." Later, after he had calmed down, and he continued, "Sir, when you get to Washington and find that all hell is broken loose, I wish you would keep one thing in mind through all the noise and confusion. We can fire a satellite into orbit 60 days from the moment you give us the green light." When the government was still reluctant to let the Army lead the U.S. into space, von Braun threatened to quit, unless the Army was given a full go-ahead. His threat to quit wasn't an empty threat either. If he did quit, many of the German scientists would also quit. This would have eventually incapacitated the Army's rocket program, and we would not have launched anything in outer space or have the ballistic missile technology advancements as promptly as we did. Never stopping to push the government, he sent several persuasive letters to Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson about how the U.S. could win the space race with strong government push, and it paid off. 1 month later, President John F. Kennedy gave his famous speech.
"I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the earth. No single space project in this period will be more impressive to mankind or more important for the long-range exploration of space, and none will be so difficult or expensive to accomplish."
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Oh, that looks beautiful from here, Neil. It has a stark beauty all its own. It's like much of the high desert of the United States. It's different, but it's very pretty out here.
Every precious minute of their 2.5 hours on the surface was programmed. Rock and soil samples were to be collected, photographs taken, experiments set up to catch unfiltered particles from the sun, to record moonquakes, to measure precisely by laser beam reflection the exact distance between moon and Earth.
Columbia, this is Houston, AOS, over. Houston, Columbia, the high gate, over. Roger, the EVA is progressing beautifully. They're setting up the flag now. I guess you're about the only person around that doesn't have TV coverage of the scene.
So, with Werner von Braun bringing German scientists to the United States, he helped to bring space to the public, which inspired millions of people. By founding the National Space Society, Werner von Braun spread information about space and rocketry over the United States while helping a small town as well. It is because of these contributions that the United States is in its current occupation in outer space. Werner von Braun led America to its place in space because of his advancements in rocket technology. His advancements have helped NASA reach the moon, and his discoveries have the potential to eventually bring astronauts to actual planets. In the end, Dr. Werner von Braun, a man who in his lifetime received countless medals, keys to cities, over 20 honorary degrees, and even the National Medal of Science, strove to reach his dream and landed us amongst the stars.